And you mentioned mobility a few minutes ago, and how does mobility relate to yoga? Like, I've heard so many people come to me and say, you should do yoga. It'll help your climbing because your core strength will be better.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I heard that in my workshops this weekend too, not from me, but from students.
Yeah. And I'm like, my core strength is better than all of you yoga teachers. Why would I go do yoga? You know? So I don't, and maybe that's a stupid response. I don't know, but I'm just curious how mobility relates to yoga and maybe how core strength does too, since these are two things I often hear kind of put into the same ring.
Yeah, totally. So the general picture of yoga that you see on Instagram or Facebook or just the commercialism, that kind of movement is moving more towards contortionism. Mm-hmm. So a really different understanding of how do I have a healthy, flexible, strong body. So I feel like a good baseline rule to think about is the stronger I am, the more stable I am, the more mobile I am, the more susceptible to injury I am.
Sure.
And that's a really nice just benchmark to say, okay, great. So if I'm doing all of these crazy binds with my shoulders, then that means when I start rock climbing, I'm more susceptible to injury.
Yeah, especially since a lot of rock climbing involves moving really dynamically, quickly, getting into these positions without, moving into them slowly.
Totally.
I've seen a lot of hypermobile people get injured that way.
Definitely. I mean, on average, my asana practice has changed so much since I've been rock climbing. It's more like, how do I get stable and keep a range of mobility that increases stability.
Right.
Because I used to be just, 13-year-old flexible all the time.
Right.
Toe to ear, every asana kind of thing, always
that doesn't
binding.
Even compute with me. Toe to ear. I don't even know what that means. I'd have to cut my foot off to get my toe to my ear.
But honestly, ego check. Like, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Am I doing this to get a good Instagram shot, or am I doing this to create a healthy, happy, stable body that is doing what I need it to do in the other activities in my life that are creating fun, joy, and expansion? So definitely always asking, like, am I as strong as I am mobile?
Yeah. And is this moving me toward my goals, whatever those goals are?
Totally.
I think that's really important, and most of the people, all of the people listening to this are climbers. I shouldn't say that. I had some people come to the booth this weekend at the trade fair who were not climbers and just said, oh, we listened to your podcast. We love your voice and everything's really fun that you talk about. And we learn important life lessons, and I was like, oh, do you guys move here for climbing? And they're like, no, we're not climbers. They had a son who was a swimmer. So the Lanti and Chu episode brought them in.
Yeah. Having the ripple effect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So most people who are listening are climbers for sure. And a lot of their yoga practice is going to be an avenue toward improving their climbing. Mm-hmm. They hope. So I think that's really important. Ask yourself, is this something that's improving my climbing?
Definitely. And if you're taking group classes, really beneficial to let your teacher know. Right. So this is what I do in my free time, and I'm trying not to shred my rotator cuffs because guess what? I often do that in my other free time.
Right.
And figuring out what needs to be more mobile and what needs to be more stable in your body. Mm-hmm. And especially for young women that are in group classes, the teacher might come and push your lower back or push in between your shoulder blades in certain asanas or yoga postures. And it's totally cool to say, hey, no, I'm actually trying to get stronger in between my shoulder blades. I don't need that, deep dip of mobility right there because that's how you think it is supposed to be taught or how it looks prettier, quote unquote.
Yeah. And this is totally, I know your answer is going to be, it depends and it's different for everyone, but where are the areas that you see most people who are involved in a regular yoga practice need to, or should maybe not worry about mobility and worry more about stability? Some of the popular like mobile spots that they should be stabilizing instead of mobilizing.
Shoulders and hamstrings for sure. So there's a lot of, and the So the yoga that we're doing now is really only 100 years old, 150 years old, really influenced by British gymnastics. And some of the older yoga is not really designed for Western bodies.
Right.
So, the time that I spent in India, I felt like a giant, like a huge giant, like totally out of place.
Right.
Like, all these people live near the equator and they have totally different physiological makeup.
Sure.
And that's something to really consider about your own body's capability, and realize that, some of the things that are ancient and are being appropriated in our culture might not be the best idea in terms of stability and mobility, in particular for the shoulder girdle and the hip girdle, which would just mean like pelvic area and shoulder blades, scapula, humerus bone, the humerus bone's relationship to the scapula and the chest.
Right.
So a lot of exploitation in those areas for sure.
Yeah. Are there popular postures that maybe climbers could skip over, or is there a something to focus on in those popular postures that would be better for them than the norm?
Yeah. Skip the chaturangas, which is like the transition from plank and you lower halfway down. There has to be a lot of core stability to not shred your rotator cuff. So even Ashtangis, which normally practice that type of posture, shred rotator cuffs all the time. And that's like a very normal yoga related injury. So that would be something to avoid. And then definitely any extreme internal or external rotation of the humerus bones.
Okay.
So that you're not really yanking on any of the tiny shoulder stabilizing muscles in the back or the front body.
Yeah.
Because there'll be a lot of opportunities where the teacher's like, and if you can take it one step further, reach down and grab your wrist. And then all of a sudden you see all the 45-year-old women that's the only activity they do all week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're like, I can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what I would do too. And I would tear something, I'm sure. My male ego would totally get in the way in that situation.